Hi, everybody. Welcome to a very special of Wednesday here at Business to Me studio is in some respect analyst one-on-one CCAA, but his name is Bob. Thank you so much. Down.
It's interesting, a little bit different. French really penalize guys. If you want to play football player, if you game, breathe a big sigh of relief and sit down. Analyst for about 30 years.
Lord knows a lot has changed over 30 years in athletics and in the advances in medicine. And I think you know where I'm going with this. Hockey and football tend to be the two leaders in the sports when it comes to concussions. I guess you could throw soccer in there as well, but certainly you have legal collisions in football and in hockey. First of all, what do you know now that you didn't know then as a coach? And would you have changed based on what you know now about the repetitive collisions with and the relationship to head injuries, concussions, and eventually CTE?
Well, in my coaching, if I went back to, back when I coached, the kids didn't even get water breaks.
I know.
I mean, if you went for water, you took a sip.
That's
that
right.
was about all you got, and the coach thought you were
A
not
whip.
gonna be, yeah, that's right, a whip. So I mean, that's how Neanderthal it was.
Right.
But if I was going back to coach now, I would have a lot less contact. I would just cut the contact way back in practice. I'd probably run a lot shorter practices, both on the football side and the hockey side. I had some direct experience. My youngest son played at high school in Concord, New Hampshire, and then in Phillips Exeter, and then he went to Assumption. So he played a lot of hockey, but he was out for about 3 weeks at Phillips Exeter with a concussion. And when he came back, he had a special helmet that was provided because he had a couple of concussions. And one of the thoughts that went through my mind is, if you're getting a special helmet after you've had concussions, why don't you get a special helmet before you have concussions? That would have been so there's been a lot of advances, even over the last 10 years, in helmets. But I think that if if you're playing contact sports, you're never going to get rid of concussions. But I think the awareness of coaches as to the seriousness of concussions, the awareness of trainers as to how long it takes kids to legitimately come back from concussions, that's huge. And all of us as coaches and color analysts, we're all more aware. So as a result, I think the contact during practice has really gone way back.
And recently in the news, Chris Borland, a 24-year-old linebacker for the San Francisco 49ers, after an outstanding rookie season, has decided to pack it in based on his future health. And it's very interesting, once again, how the NFL is trying to spin it one way. And Robert Stern, who's the head of the BU CTE Institute, is basically saying, no, there is a correlation between the two. And this young man, Chris Borland, deserves our respect and certainly support for what he did. How difficult do you think it was? And what do you know about making that kind of a decision?
Well, it's interesting. This past week, Chuck Bednarik died.
Yeah. Oh, my
and
goodness.
he died of dementia and Alzheimer's.
Right.
But he was
89
a
years
World
old.
War II veteran, 89.
Right.
But it was interesting what his daughter said. Because his daughters talked about concussions, and they said he wasn't just recently a victim of dementia and Alzheimer's. It's been going on for a long time.
Right.
Which means that Chuck Bednarik was a victim of that disease
Right.
a lot earlier than just late onset Alzheimer's. When I was playing football at the collegiate level, there were a lot of times, because I play linebacker, and a lot of collisions.
Right.
And I remember distinctly this following thought running through my head many times. This is not good for me. I remember having that thought.
Interesting.
This is not good for me. When you get crunched and the stars start flying, and that thought went through my head. And I'm sure that Chris Borland, who was a great linebacker, and I'm sure that thought went through his head many times, and he finally got out of it. It's individual. It seems to be some people more susceptible than others, but I don't know that. But it has to be seriously addressed by all sports. There's a lot of concussion problems in soccer.
Yes, there are.
So it's got to be addressed in all sports. I see it at the prep school level with my son's team because kids are kept out of games way longer than they used to be kept out until they can pass certain protocols. And I think that's all good. You're never going to get rid of it in contact sports, but the awareness of it has got to improve it. But to put your head in the sand and say it's not a huge problem, particularly in football, and it's not going to have an impact on kids' decision to play, that's crazy.
Right, and it's the repetitive nature. It's not necessarily the big, severe, crushing hit that once in a while happens in both games. It is truly the regular collisions and the regular trauma to the head that causes these kinds of things.
Yeah, you know, I don't remember having those kinds of experiences myself, but this is not good for me as a high school player.
Right.
But I had them a lot as a college player. Well, it was 4 years later.
Interesting.
Playing against players that are bigger,
Right.
stronger,
Yeah.
faster. Collisions are more,
Right.
more
Intense.
impact.
Yeah.
And so I was getting, obviously participating in games, I was getting hit a lot harder.
Yeah.
So there are a lot more of those moments. And it's a distinct memory to me to have to say this is not good. I mean, it never was the point that I did what Chris Borland did, was just walk away from a lot of money, and there's a lot of money involved. People don't do it. But the fact that it's an experience for people is, I bet you I wasn't the only one. A lot of guys have that experience.
No, absolutely now. And I'm going to talk a little bit about soccer for a second, because that's a sport I coached for 35 years. And as a youth soccer coach, based on my experience with coaches that really didn't have a clue in the 60s and 70s on how to teach heading, I never taught heading to a young person before the age of 14. And when I did teach heading, I would use a tennis ball, because a tennis ball is not intimidating to a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 14-year-old kid. It's just not. And it teaches great timing and the ability to actually see the right spot on your forehead to make contact with the ball. And the concussions are not necessarily caused in soccer by head-to-ball trauma, but it's two people going up for the ball and colliding heads. So again, a bad technique more than anything else. I never tried to head the ball. I always got position and brought the ball down to the ground, because that's where the game should be played. That's the coach in me talking.
Yeah,
Okay?
sure. Yeah.
And I love, and again, I know for a fact a lot of coaches out there, how do I teach heading? How do I teach heading? Use a tennis ball. Use a beach ball.
You know,
Anything that you can actually see hit your forehead.
one of the things, there's a lot of things people don't think about. For instance, when I was a high school principal, we had girls lacrosse and girls field hockey. I never have been able to understand why girls wear helmets and face masks in lacrosse and don't wear them in field hockey.
That's a good point.
It just, I never could understand that.
Right.
So there's a lot of these things in
Well,
sport.
the ball's played on the ground more in field hockey. In fact, they encourage that.
But the sticks are swung.
Right. I
And they're
agree.
not always swung in the same direction.
Correct.
And the
100%.
collisions are out there.
That's right.
So, I mean, it's just always, there's a lot of things in sport that once you develop an awareness of, hey, bad things can happen with head trauma,
Right.
you then become aware of, okay, what are the potential reasons for it, and how can we mitigate those reasons? That's the issue.
Not a lot of concussions in golf.
No. Although I've hit some balls in some directions that threaten people with
I was
being
going
hit
to
up
say,
with coconut
and
water.
I've seen it happen to others, hitting
Yeah.
that golf ball off the tee and getting banged in the head, and that is not a good thing, but rare unto itself.
Right.
And obviously, you try to actually hit it into that big green space in the middle of the hole. It would be the fairway or the green,
Right.
which doesn't normally happen. You playing a lot of golf now?
I do. I play a lot. My first year I was retired, I played 100 times.
Oh, my
between
goodness gracious.
between April and November, when we finally in New Hampshire have to get off the golf course. I've sort of missed, my sanity has checked in since then. And there were a couple of times I went up there in the middle of the week and it was 95 degrees out and say, this is getting a little like work. And so I don't play quite as, I probably play about 50, 60 times between. I play a lot. And,
That's great.
I enjoy it. Don't take it too seriously. Just treat it as a walk in the woods with a stick and a ball.
That's right. And it's not a spoiled rock, okay? No matter what John Feinstein will say. Great book, by the way. But let's talk a little bit about education. Because I know, you spent a lot of time in sports, and you've also spent 30 years in
30 years,
education. So you know a little something about what's going on. What's the biggest challenge facing educators today with the revolution in technology? Because it happens so fast. How are they adapting technology into the classroom, and are they able to take advantage of it yet?
Well, you asked me what the biggest problem is. The biggest problem that we as educators have is how to get non-performing kids to perform.
Okay.
And whether
Motivation.
not just motivation, there's a million factors that go into it. Motivation is one of it, but there's a lot of social dynamics that go into it. And it's not just a black, white, Hispanic issue. There are a lot of kids who don't perform. And how do you get the non-performing kids in the school? I used to call it the bottom quarter. How do you get those kids to engage, to perform, to participate? And that's if we could figure out a way to successfully do that across the board to all the kids, whether they're Hispanic kids, Afro-American kids, English as a second language kids, all those kind of kids, getting the non-performers to perform is the biggest task all of us face as educators.
Interesting. And you know, over 5 years working with young broadcasters, I've used that camera as a way to get that bottom quarter, because every one of those kids has a passion. And even if it is, okay, all I do is play video games, I'm like, great. What's the favorite video game you have? What's the favorite system you have? I try to engage them to find their passion. You know, as an educator, how important it is to identify passion in young people and get them excited about learning more about that and feeding that.
I think what hits on that is you got to really determine as a teacher and as somebody who's setting curriculum, you need to find out how kids learn. Because every kid, you learn one way, I learn another way. So if we're in a classroom where a teacher is lecturing the entire classroom, and I'm a good note taker, and that's something that feeds the way I learn.
Right, got to write it down to remember.
I'm going to do fine. I take the notes, go home, study the notes, come in, spit back the notes. I do okay. If your attention is not real great, and you tune out after 10 minutes of note taking, like one of my sons did, they just tuned out after, and you've got a teacher that delivers notes, you're lost. The last 40 minutes or 50 minutes of class. So there's got to be, you've got to have dynamics as a teacher and as an educational program that tries to find out the ways kids learn. And that's a teacher using multiple kinds of learning styles, implementing multiple kinds of learning styles in a classroom. And part of it, I believe, an area that has really been weak in my school, other schools for many, many years, because I think it's a thing that kids can do better, learn how to do well, and really be a great thing going forward, is how to get up on their feet and speak. If they get up on their feet and speak, they can learn how to do a lot of things. It helps them no matter what area of business they want to go in. It's going to help them no matter what area of trade they want to go in. It's going to help them be able to get up on your feet and speak. And it's one thing that if I had to point my finger at one thing that we dropped the ball on in schools is the opportunity to give kids get up on their feet and speak. Some teachers do a great job of it, but it's a gap in most curriculums.
And you've been in the public arena for the most part, but you had kids that went to the private side. I've always felt that the private schools do emphasize public speaking more than the public schools.
Well, in some ways it's easier because when my son went to Exeter, he PG'd at Exeter, and I asked him what the difference was between Exeter and he went to Concord High in New Hampshire, which is a great public high school. I said, what's the difference? He said, Dad, at Exeter I couldn't hide. And at Concord there were 25 kids in the class. So not every kid was speaking every class. At Exeter, you were in a classroom at the old Harkness table, what they call it, Exeter, you had 12 kids. When you went into that classroom, you're a dead duck if you weren't prepared.
That's right.
So, and you were going to have to get up on your feet and speak. So the difference was not necessarily the quality of curriculum instruction, but you can have a great English teacher with 24, 25. Tough to do the same thing you have with a great English teacher with 12.
And I'm teaching at the college level now, and I have 25 young people in my class at Curry, and getting them engaged over 2.5 hours once a week is a challenge. And I try to mix it up with different media. I play a video, this is one example of this, here's another example of that. And then I do try to reach out to them and say, pointedly, what do you think about that? What do you think about that? So they will absolutely, I can't wait for them to raise their hand, forget that, okay? Point it out to them, and like you said, call them on the carpet and say, what do you think about that? You have an opinion about Deflategate. I know you do. Tell me what you think.
Well, the trick is, I used to tell the teachers all the time when I was going around observing class, that kids sit in class in a way that determines how much they want to participate. So if you look at a map of the class and you draw a block where every kid sits, Most of the kids who want to participate, want to be recognized, want to be called on are front left, front right. The hiders are back right and particularly back left because most teachers are right eye dominant. So they will call on the right side, right front, and then secondly left front, and then right back. But if you want to hide and not participate, left back.
Okay, now think about this for a second, because back in my day, it was alphabetical. My last name being Young, I was always in the right back, okay? And I had to learn how to project my voice to get involved. Perhaps that helped me indirectly.
Oh, maybe. Maybe. Most of the hiders. So I would tell teachers all the time, call on kids. Don't call on hands raised.
Call on names.
Just have the kids have an expectation in class
that they're going
to be called on.
Interesting.
And the teacher's block is the same, because if the teacher stays in the same place all the time, they have a tendency to call. So the teacher's got to move so that left front becomes the right front, becomes the left front. You move around. So you call on, and that way you get kids who are hesitant to participate, not because they don't know it, but just because they don't have confidence getting up on their feet. That you got to get them to call on them.
No, you have to step outside your comfort zone, because, as you know, it's uncomfortable, especially in the beginning, to stand up and tell me who you are, which is what I do in the very first day.
But it's the secret to success when you get out of school, because most jobs you have, the way you get ahead in many positions is being able to articulate your point of view on your feet. And if that's a huge skill that helps you move forward in the world of work, then it's something that you should learn.
Being a talk show host, for instance.
Well, that's not exactly getting ahead of the world.
But you have to tell a story, you have to articulate an opinion, you have to look at both sides of an argument. All of those things go into being a talk show host.
That's almost an oxymoron.
Yes, I understand that too. But Bob Norton, as usual, I loved talking with you when you used to come on my show back in the day.
Sometimes it was a photo finish. I'd do the game at BU, and you'd call and you'd tell me some guest didn't show up, or could I come over to meet him?
You were on my A-list, and you always answered it too, I might add, and I really do appreciate that. More importantly, I appreciate the fact that you drove down here on a beautiful day, albeit cold, not warm enough to play golf, to come down here and join me in the studio to talk more, because I've always enjoyed your opinion, your analysis, and how you look at life, really, not only sports, but in education as well.
Well, it's a pleasure. I've always enjoyed working with you, but the key thing is that I enjoyed my career as an educator more than my career as a broadcaster, which I had a lot of fun with. But my career as an educator, I had a chance to impact kids. And nobody ever comes back to me for my broadcast career saying, hey, Mr. Norton, thanks for what you did for me. But there are kids that come back from my principal career and said, hey, Mr. Norton, thanks for what you did for me. And that makes all the difference in the world.
Best feeling in the world.
You bet.
It really is. For Bob Norton, I'm Jimmy Young. This has been another long edition of Wednesday Bytes. That's Bytes with a Y, but we look for Bytes, sound bites with an I. Thanks for watching.